instance, if an IT manager went to you and it came to you and said, "Hey, I've got to pick out, a file transfer solution, a file transfer product. What should I be thinking about as I shop around? Is simplicity the most important thing? Is security? Is speed of transfer? Is a certain feature set, really essential? How do you go about choosing one of these solutions?"
So the short answer to that is it depends who your consumer is, right? So if you have office workers, productivity kind of software running on this, clearly performance is going to be key. And you may even decide that I want to replicate the entire data set to that location because I can't afford to ever have them not see a piece of data or miss something, and tools like SnapMirror would come in. But
what's the tool? Could you give me the name of that tool again?
SnapMirror, NetApp's
tool. SnapMirror. Okay, yeah, right.
Now, but in practice, what really happens is data sets are much larger than the end user's ability to consume them. Okay, you probably have petabytes or hundreds of petabytes or even more of data, right, out of which you really are looking at a very small little world out of that. So it probably does not make sense, going back to Jim's point here, to necessarily replicate this entire petabytes of information in every place you're going to use it. I mean, imagine trying to do that with a laptop. Okay, if you're using data in the cloud. So that's where the caching solutions come in. It's all about how efficiently can you deliver user experience, okay, while not having the users complain, right? It's about making the user experience great, but not necessarily having to invest millions of dollars doing that. And that's really what we're about. It's about how efficiently can we deliver the experience to the user, and also about things like optimizing the bandwidth. Absolutely, that is important. We can't, even though bandwidth has become a lot cheaper these days, you can't afford to have a gigabit pipe to every location you're going to consume the data from, right? So being very intelligent about how you're sending the data to the user, when you're sending it, being intelligent about saying, okay, the user is not really using this data, I don't really need to store it locally. So these are all aspects of the application set. So my answer to you would be all of the above. You have to look at all of the above, and then you have to prioritize your metrics by saying, what is it that I'm really looking to do? In some sites, it might only be about backup. You may not really care about how fast the data goes over, or it may be about optimizing the bandwidth cost. But if user experience is important, then I would argue that you should be looking at more caching, a combination of the three solutions that are in front of you.
I mean, certainly when companies talk about keeping their employees productive, they don't want someone waiting that extra 10, 15 minutes, a half hour for the file. So I think user experience does become really central for a lot of companies in terms of file acceleration.
Absolutely. And in fact, with the cloud world, it becomes even worse because now the data centers are much further away. You have less control over the paths your packets take to get to them.
Right.
So it becomes even more important, really, to control, to figure out how to cache, how to be very efficient about your transfers. And a lot of these cloud providers also charge you for downloads, for example.
Right.
So again, that's a very important aspect. You want to be very intelligent with how you're doing your caching to make sure that the right data is available at the right time.
Carl, what advice would you give to that poor IT manager who's tasked with the idea of picking out a file acceleration, file transfer tool? What would you say is the single most important thing? If you have a medium-level business, medium-sized business, what's essential?
So I'm going to set aside security. I mean, I think that's table stakes across the board for any enterprise. They have to have a solution that provides security as it sends data or for collaboration purposes. Setting that aside, I think the next biggest thing is simplicity. When you look at solutions that help facilitate sharing, whether it be ShareFile for small personal type files, or it's the solution from Talon that allows large organizations to collaborate on complex data sets, it's got to be simple to use, because enterprise IT budgets get squeezed year over year over year, and the idea is how can I take my IT resources and employ them not in hand-holding employees to solve problems, but in making the network more efficient, and enabling applications to be more efficient, or supporting the larger business objectives of tracking usage and metrics and statistics for all of the new cloud-based services that the enterprise is offering to their customer base. So I go back to simplicity.
So in other words, so each individual worker is not going to need an IT person doing some hand-holding to keep them up and running, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cedric, what your advice to that IT manager? How do you pick out a solution?
It has to fit their current tool set. So they need to be able to leverage whatever they are comfortable with. And what we see as a vision for NetApp is really those hybrid solutions leveraging our operating system called Cluster on Tap, because this is our uniqueness. We have one set of operating system that we can deploy in the cloud, on-premise, like I said before, and use the same tools to manage that.
Are you talking about ShareFile, or are you talking about another one now?
No, in this case, I was talking about Data on Tap, so the operating system that runs the storage for NetApp.
Gotcha, yeah. Jim, your advice to that person, how do you pick out a file acceleration solution?
Well, I think the use case is probably the single most important thing. So are we sharing a file among a lot of different people? And are we using our own internal systems for ensuring that we've got the right credentials to access that data? That is as important a factor as can we move data rapidly from a data center in Boston to an end user in Timbuktu? So you've got multiple use cases that you've got to deal with. Can you deal in a case of a small part of the file being cached locally and get by with that, or do you have to get into more exotic locking of parts of databases and unlocking parts of databases and so forth? So there are a number of considerations that go into this, and so that'd be my advice. Understand your use cases, because the toolkits to address these various use cases are going to be different.
Well, I mean, can you talk at all about how the various toolkits tend to differentiate themselves? I mean, is it one aspect, or what are the aspects they typically differentiate themselves?
Well, from the simplicity standpoint, to Carl's point, a one-size-fits-all is going to be the easiest thing for an IT manager to deal with, but he still has to take into account the issues of how many simultaneous shares are going to be going on. Mm-hmm. That gets right into the configuration. Are you using some cold storage archive capability like an Amazon Glacier, and then speeding things up with local caching, which several companies do? Right. Those are all considerations that are going to fall into the cost and the ultimate end user experience that you're going to run into.